Okay. Uh, Good evening. We are the group 13 of STAC Section A. I, Shan Agrawal, along with my teammates Shivam, Ekta, Hemant, Pritish, and Mohsin. Today we are discussing the case of Kingfisher Airlines, the strategic decisions they made, and what happened along their lifeline. Before starting this case, I want to take the reference from the HBR case, that is why good companies go bad. This case will help us to understand this case of Kingfisher better. This case was published in HBR, and according to this, it discusses the reasons why good companies, successful companies, go bad. So, the first reason is we can see there's a success trap. So, when a company becomes successful, they start to focus on refining and extending their existing competencies and successful practices instead of adapting to the market changes and market developments. Then comes the issue of active inertia, which is the tendency of companies to respond to dramatic shifts in their environment by accelerating activities that have historically worked well. So again, they do not adapt to the changes that are required. These two factors are resulted by outdated strategic frames, outdated processes which are very rigid. Then comes long-term relationships, which makes the processes rigid, and ultimately the deep ingrained values which are beneficial at the initial part, but sometimes tend to make the norms very rigid and forceful. Now we'll start with the example of Kingfisher Airlines on the basis of this case. To start with the background of Kingfisher Airlines, it was founded in 2005 by the entrepreneur Vijay Mallya. He was a prominent Indian businessman. Initial success of Kingfisher Airlines was ensured by its high quality service and a fleet that was the epitome of modernity at that time. Then comes the market expansion. So Kingfisher expanded its operation, aiming to become a major player in the Indian aviation market. But somewhere in the movement, there came financial challenges. The airline faced increasing financial pressure due to rising fuel costs and competition. The next slides will be covered by my colleague Mohsin. So over to you, Mohsin.
Okay, thank you, Shan. So let's have a look at the success and the commitment to quality of the Kingfisher Airline. So one of the key approach they took was the customer-centric approach. So at that time, there were many competition at when they started. So they were prioritizing satisfaction of the passengers instead of focusing on cost saving. And they have the modern fleet. They were the first Indian airline to order the Airbus A380, which makes them stand out among the competition. Brand building. They were branding the product as a luxury and sophisticated offering. With which they were trying to attract the premium customers. And in terms of employee training, they invested heavily, which was a result of their approach on the high premium customer base they were trying to target. Uh, can you go to the next slide? And their success formula, which was based on market dominance, financial stability, and their operational efficiency. They established themselves as the leading airline in India. So they had a strong brand and a loyal customer base. Especially, they were targeting the high-end customers. And when it comes to financial stability, they had a strong performance at the beginning, and which helped them in solidifying their position in the industry. Also, this motivated them to go further in their um, ambitions. And then operational efficiency, they have developed a standard structured operational model. They were really high level operational model, and focusing on efficiency and reliable air travel, which was aimed at capturing the high end premium customer base. So next will be covered by Hemant.
Thank you, Mohsin. Everything seems good till now, but then success trap happened. Kingfisher Airline mishandled resource allocation very well, especially in terms of overexpansion, diversification, and lack of financial discipline. In overexpansion, Kingfisher Airline expanded its fleet too rapidly beyond its financial capacity. This led to increase in debt and operational inefficiency. And this also costed them a high maintenance cost and underutilized capacity. And in diversification, Kingfisher expanded their routes beyond their core competency. They ventured into low-cost carrier aircraft to compete with Indigo. This lack of focus spread resources across different market segments and weakening its ability to compete against their competitor. And finally, lack of financial discipline. They borrowed heavily and without any solid plan for repayment or revenue. So this all led to cash crunch, which ultimately resulted into downfall of Kingfisher. But wait, is this the only reason? To further explain the further reasons which led to Kingfisher downfall, I would like to invite Pritish.
Thanks a lot, Hemant. I think looking at our paths that we covered in our presentation so far, I would like to say that whenever there's a problem, we would very well address it in English. Like when it rains, it pours heavily. The same happened similarly in the case of Kingfisher Airlines. So let's discuss the relationships and external pressures that were purging the company from an external perspective, from a strategic perspective. If you look at both frameworks, Pestle and Five Forces framework, we can understand that there are a lot of external factors that also involve strategic problems at important companies. Kingfisher at that point was a systematically important company in the Indian airlines, Indian aviation sector. And the aviation sector was in such position that it was dynamically evolving. There were many new players that were being introduced at that point in time, and many were leading on the front of cost. The similar strategies could have been followed by Kingfisher to avert consequences of a grave practices and measures. But we could highlight three main reasons that affected Kingfisher a lot. The primary one would be fuel costs, because the requirement by aviation and planes were very high. There was rapidly increasing fuel prices that affected and put significant pressure on the company. Further, if you look at the competition, suddenly, as we said, the industry was evolving a lot. There was intense competition that was witnessed by other airlines, both on domestic and international front. This also somewhat resulted in erosion of Kingfisher's overall market share. So a company that was initially very strong in the Indian market slowly started losing its initial position. Also, if you look at the regulatory environment, there were a lot of changes that were being introduced and implemented, which kind of affected Kingfisher's operational and strategic policy. That is why the airline started facing more and more problems. This is how the problem started becoming more complex, and overall, it all compounded into a big loss of face for the company. Next slide. If you look at the next slide, here are the values and corporate culture that kind of affected the entire problem. If you look at it closely, we can again point over some problems. I would like to highlight the lack of transparency that was being observed in the company. So if you look at the financial documents of the company, we can highlight the fact that there were raising concerns among investor and lenders because of lack of transparency. So many investment decisions were not being addressed very clearly in the reports, and because which led to loss of confidence among investors, eventually foreseeing unexpected consequences. Further, there was excessive spending, and like there was not much thought given behind spending by on marketing activities by the company. That's how they resulted on spending on unnecessary projects and expansion ideas. So that is how it was one of the decisions that impacted the company's decision. Finally, from an HR perspective, as this was a change management situation, the company really didn't handle this process really well. As a result of which, we could witness many internal conflicts that were eventually plaguing the company. So these are the problems that were observed on the value and corporate culture front. Next, I would like to invite Ekta to continue this further.
Thank you, Pritish. Now I'll be explaining about the consequences of active inertia. So active inertia, as it is explained, that it is the tendency of a company to respond to dramatic changes with their shifts in their environment by accelerating the activities that have historically worked well. So the major consequences faced by them are financial distress, operational disruptions, employee layoffs, brand reputation damage. So in case of financial distress, Kingfisher faced mounting debt and a severe cash flow crisis, ultimately leading to bankruptcy. And in case of operational disruptions, the airline experienced flight cancellations, delays, and a decline in service quality due to financial difficulties. And employee layoffs, Kingfishers was forced to lay off employees, impacting the livelihood of many individuals. And in case of brand reputation damage, the airline's reputation was severely tarnished, resulting in a loss of public trust. Now, Shivam will continue with the.
Okay, so thank you, team, for such a wonderful explanation. So I would like to conclude that we can see that why good companies go bad. We have seen the success stuff. We have seen the falling of active inertia. So we have concluded that if we have gone to a certain level and you have to maintain that, you have to be very transparent. You cannot be opaque. You have to maintain some good financial terms with your investors, and you cannot take more burden that you cannot overcome. So that's what we have learned, and in the next slide we can see the learnings from this case. So Pritish, can you move to the next slide? So yeah, the lessons that we have learned is that we have to maintain a financial discipline and we have to maintain the perfect corporate culture. As you can see that in case of Kingfisher, it was kind of an autocratic culture dictated by Vijay Mallya. And if you can also take an Indian example of Byju's, it was also same like this. They were having the same condition. So they started very well, they hit off very well, but they fell down. So these are the reasons, and we can learn that we have to maintain some discipline in our governance in our financial terms, and we have to maintain some kind of transparency.